sin is against us. Wickedness is not good for us. So when you can let Allah, God, come in, where when you move your tongue, it's His words. When you move your hands to teach others how to defend themselves, that's what God has given you, because you're living among your enemies.
Go ahead.
So you have to know how to fight.
That's right. It's a must.
And you must become skilled as fighters. But the first war, the greatest war, is with yourself.
Today we'll listen and reflect on the words of Minister Louis Farrakhan. His message speaks to faith, responsibility, and the condition of our people. It is not only about religion, but about reclaiming purpose and confronting the forces that shape our lives. This video will follow his words closely, expanding them with history and context so we can understand their depth. The goal is to look deeper into why it matters, and why these lessons continue to echo in the struggles faced by communities around the world. Let's begin.
From the time that I got out of the car and met my son and got the report of the wonderful classes that were going on here and the response to the knowledge that was given, it made me feel like the elder that I'm becoming. That our work was not in vain. Our work will never be in vain.
That's right. That's right.
And to use the word in vain, see, when you work only for you, you're already dead. You're just waiting for time to place you with the worms who are better than you. Because the worm is doing what Allah created it to do. And if we are vain, we're thinking only of ourselves. But this is a beautiful gathering of men and women, boys and girls who see beyond themselves. They want to see a nation rise.
That's right. That's right.
And they want to see an earth free from the burden of the wicked.
When Minister Farrakhan speaks of feeling the weight of age, yet also the satisfaction of legacy, he is pointing to one of the deepest questions any movement must confront: whether the years of labor have truly moved the needle for the people. The sense of becoming an elder within a liberation struggle carries more than personal reflection. It ties into the lineage of Black leaders who looked back at decades of work and wondered whether the sacrifices were worth it. W.E.B. Du Bois, late in his life, relocated to Ghana and told audiences that he often felt his efforts had not yielded the full measure of justice he sought. Marcus Garvey, after imprisonment and exile, similarly questioned whether his vision of a unified global Black nation had been thwarted. Yet in both cases, the ideas they carried endured beyond their lifetimes. To speak of work never being in vain is to align with that continuum, affirming that the seeds of a movement do not always blossom within one generation. The idea that selfishness equates to a kind of living death has echoes in both religious and revolutionary traditions. In Christian scripture, the Apostle Paul wrote that one who lives only for the flesh cannot experience true life in the Spirit. In Islamic teaching, the Quran warns that arrogance and self-absorption veil the heart from the truth. Across liberation struggles, whether in Algeria, South Africa, or the United States, leaders stressed that individual advancement without collective uplift amounted to betrayal. The notion that a worm fulfills its purpose more faithfully than a person who refuses to act for justice is a striking way of stressing divine order. Every creature serves creation by doing what it was made to do. Humans, with intellect and moral responsibility, are judged more severely when they fail in that calling. The gathering described, of men, women, and children seeking something greater, is reminiscent of the community meetings that have defined every step of African American progress. During Reconstruction, Black families crowded into churches not only for worship, but to learn to read, to hear political debates, and to plan for land ownership. In the 1950s and 1960s, mass meetings in Montgomery and Jackson gave ordinary people courage to withstand the violence of white supremacy. These meetings were not simply about words spoken from a podium. They were acts of solidarity that reminded each participant they were not alone. In the Nation of Islam's history, such gatherings became a key part of its appeal. In the 1950s, when Malcolm X rose to prominence in Harlem, many people testified they came not only for theology, but for the sense of order, respect, and discipline that collective assembly produced. The yearning for a nation to rise is not limited to a geographic state, but reflects the aspiration for sovereignty and dignity. Black nationalism has always carried multiple interpretations. Some envisioned a literal territory in Africa. Others saw the building of institutions in America as a form of nation within a nation. The Nation of Islam leaned into both at different times, advocating repatriation in some periods, while also building schools, businesses, and farms that could sustain Black people domestically. To speak of wanting the earth free from wickedness taps into a broader critique of global structures. From colonialism to modern systems of exploitation, there is recognition that oppression is not only a matter of individual prejudice, but of entrenched economic and political power. By gathering, learning, and organizing, communities prepare themselves not just to endure, but to transform conditions. History suggests that such efforts can ripple outward. Literacy campaigns in post-colonial nations show how quickly education spreads when people believe their collective future depends on it. Cooperative farming and buying programs in 20th century Black America demonstrated that resource pooling could create stability in hostile environments. In more recent decades, grassroots movements have drawn on digital platforms to replicate the old gathering model, turning shared knowledge into both political momentum and cultural affirmation. When Farrakhan acknowledges seeing boys and girls in attendance, he is recognizing that continuation of the struggle depends on generational handoff. Farrakhan's words at this point move from a reflection on individual purpose to a sweeping diagnosis of collective corruption. He frames the moral crisis of humanity as a condition where the mind, heart, and spirit have been captured by destructive forces. This is not a new theme in religious or political discourse. In Islamic teaching, Shaitan is not only a tempter, but a deceiver whose ultimate aim is to distort the human being's original nature, the fitra, which is the innate tendency toward truth and righteousness. Christian thought contains a similar motif of the prince of this world who blinds and ensnares people so that they act against their own highest good. By invoking this imagery, Farrakhan places present-day behavior in a cosmic struggle rather than a purely social one. When he speaks of God having chosen a people for a purpose and that this group has become victims of satanic influence, the historical resonance is unmistakable. In American history, enslaved Africans were stripped of language, religion, and family ties, forced into systems that rewarded betrayal and punished solidarity. Generations of such conditioning left deep scars that civil rights activists and scholars alike have described as internalized oppression. The concept first gained prominence in the work of Fanon, who wrote about how colonial subjects come to mimic the values and vices of the colonizer. Fanon's Black Skin, White Masks argues that domination is most complete when the oppressed begin to identify with the oppressor's worldview. Farrakhan's language of being made into himself echoes that analysis, suggesting that conquered people have been reshaped to serve the interests of their conquerors, even in thought and behavior. This is not simply metaphorical. Studies in sociology and psychology have shown how systemic discrimination creates cycles of mistrust and competition within marginalized communities. Policies such as redlining, unequal schooling, and discriminatory policing corrode social trust and channel frustration inward. The rise of underground economies during periods of exclusion also fostered behaviors like deception or predation as survival tactics. Critics from Malcolm X to Angela Davis have pointed out that these patterns cannot be understood apart from the structures that produced them. Farrakhan's stark description of little devils scheming and lying is meant to shock listeners into recognizing how far oppression can deform a people's moral compass when survival feels like the only goal. The claim that his time is up points to a prophetic vision of history where unjust systems do not endure indefinitely. Liberation theology in Latin America, the writings of anti-colonial leaders, and the sermons of black preachers in the United States have all carried this note: that evil structures eventually exhaust their legitimacy and collapse. In Quranic terms, falsehood may appear to triumph, but it withers when confronted with truth. In the Bible's revelation, Babylon falls when its iniquity reaches its fullness. By declaring that the time of Satan's world is ending, Farrakhan is not only warning of divine judgment, but urging his audience to prepare for a transition, to cast off habits and mentalities that belong to the old order. His emphasis on being not yourself when breaking natural and divine law is ultimately a challenge to rediscover authenticity. The prophetic message across faiths insists that humanity was created with the capacity for justice and compassion. Deviating from that design may be widespread, but it is not inevitable. By naming the deforming influence and declaring its time over, Farrakhan seeks to awaken a people to the reality that liberation requires both external change and internal restoration. Only by rejecting the imposed identity and embracing their original calling can communities move from a cycle of harm into a future defined by dignity and self-determination. The instruction to set your face toward religion refers to a deep act of alignment, not just a verbal commitment, but a total orientation of life. In Quran 30:30, which is the verse being cited, the emphasis is on fitra, the natural disposition that God has instilled in all human beings. Fitra is the foundation upon which faith and morality rest. To set one's face is to return to that origin, to reject distractions and distortions, and to live in accordance with what was designed from the beginning. Within Islamic tradition, this verse is often invoked to remind people that righteousness is not foreign to them. It is already within, waiting to be awakened and preserved. The idea that everything created has its own nature carries wide significance. Classical Islamic scholars such as Al-Ghazali wrote that the divine order is visible in every part of the universe, from the stars in their orbits to the instincts of animals.
So if you will let it go and let him come in, you'll improve your skill as a warrior, because there's no greater warrior than God himself. None. I close with this verse from the Quran. Set your face for religion, being upright. The nature made by Allah in which He has created the human being. And there is no altering His creation. Everything that functions in accord with its nature has the power of God to do and be itself. Set your face. For religion, not talking upright.
Come on now. Come on now. Come on now.
Not saying, well, tomorrow I'll be better. Say it now.
Being upright.
Being upright to Him who created us and gave us His nature.
This connects with broader philosophical currents, too. Aristotle argued that all beings have a telos, a natural end or function, and that the flourishing of any creature depends on fulfilling that telos. In modern thought, ecological studies affirm a similar truth. Species survive when they operate according to the systems that sustain them. To break that balance is to invite collapse. Farrakhan's point is that human beings are no exception. When they honor their God-given nature, they can wield the strength to live uprightly. When they betray it, they cut themselves off from their true source of power. This emphasis on uprightness links back to prophetic teachings across traditions. In the Bible, the prophet Micah asks what God requires and answers: to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna urges Arjuna to rise and act in accordance with his dharma, his sacred duty. These parallels show how often religious teachers insist that righteousness is less about lofty speech and more about practice. To stand upright is to embody integrity in every sphere: personal, communal, economic, and political. Farrakhan underscores this by warning against delay, pressing his listeners to choose alignment now rather than promising themselves a future change that never arrives. History gives many examples of how this form of spiritual alignment has translated into collective strength. The civil rights movement in the United States was not only a political campaign, but also a deeply religious endeavor. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy drew from Scripture to fortify themselves and their communities, insisting that nonviolence was not weakness, but a higher discipline rooted in divine law. Similarly, anti-colonial movements across Africa and the Caribbean found grounding in spiritual convictions that their liberation was part of a larger cosmic justice. By framing uprightness as immediate and necessary, Farrakhan places his audience in that same tradition of people who refused to postpone righteousness. The closing call to set one's face toward the divine is, then, not a ritualistic command, but a radical demand for transformation. It pushes listeners to rise from complacency, to cease postponing their moral duty, and to live as beings who embody divine purpose. In a world where oppression, confusion, and distraction abound, such alignment becomes a revolutionary act. The power it offers is not just survival, but the authority to be fully human as intended. Thank you for watching and reflecting with us. If this breakdown gave you new insight, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Share your thoughts in the comments because your perspective matters here. We've got more powerful content coming soon, so stay tuned. This is Black Culture Unlocked, and we'll see you in the next one.